Can your trash get you arrested? Can it make you rich? Can you sue the government if their junk injures you? We're digging into the laws of junk on today's episodes of Hammer's Law. Welcome back. I'm attorney Darryl Isaacs, the Kentucky Hammer. Let's talk about junk, trash, all that stuff we throw away and forget about. It's pretty easy, right? Out of your hand and into the can. But here's the thing. Just because we're throwing it away doesn't mean that it disappears. In fact, it really piles up. For instance, the EPA estimate that in 2018, the United States produced more than 292 million tons of municipal solid waste, which is just a polite way of saying garbage. That's almost 5 pounds of trash per person per day. Man, that's a lot of trash. Most of us have an idea of where it goes. We imagine a garbage dump hundreds of miles from where we live with mountains and mountains of trash piling up. And because it's out of sight and out of mind, it doesn't occur to us, think about who owns it or who takes care of it. This is where the conversation about junk gets very interesting. The truth is that garbage belongs to all of us. And I don't mean that in a weird symbolic way, where we all have to take responsibility for the amount of trash that we create as a society. Although that's true, and we do create a whole bunch of trash, no. What I mean is that trash is actually public property. In 1988, the Supreme Court ruled that trash becomes public property once it's been put out onto the curb. Why is that important? Well, first of all, that means the police can go through your trash if they're looking for evidence of a crime. So if you're a criminal, be careful what you put in your trash cans. In 2019, a South Dakota police solved a 38-year-old case of a newborn baby's death by gaining DNA evidence from their suspect by going through their garbage. Who knew that junk was that valuable? Well, I'll tell you who thinks junk is valuable. Hoarders. For those of you who have never seen the long-running reality series on A&E, let me explain about what hoarding is. And I want to be sensitive, so let's get some help from the experts here. According to the Mayo Clinic, hoarding disorder is an ongoing difficulty throwing away or parting with possessions because you believe that you need to save them. You may experience distress at the thought of getting rid of items. You gradually keep or gather a huge number of items regardless of their actual value. Now, that last part is very important, regardless of their actual value. Not everything that a hoarder keeps is without value, but most of it isn't worth a lot of money. It simply creates a strong emotional and psychological attachment for the person doing the hoarding. Everyone creates junk. It's just that most of us don't hold on to it. We take it to the curb, forget about it, and then either the garbage men come and take it away, or the police dig through it to try and catch us in a crime. I'm just kidding. Maybe, but what about people who hold on to all their junk? Can hoarders get into legal trouble for their hoarding? Is it illegal? Is it a criminal offense? Well, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. In most of the United States, there are no laws stating that hoarding is actually illegal. Think about this. At what point does something technically become hoarding? Do you measure it by the pound? Do you have a certain amount of clearance that is required to walk through a hallway or living room? One person might have a serious hoarding problem that causes them to fill a whole room with plastic grocery bags and old newspapers, while someone else, like a collector, fills an entire room with baseball cards or Beanie Babies or creepy old dolls with empty glass eyes that stare lifelessly out at you from their shelves. You get the point. Passing laws that define hoarding could be real messy, real quick. That's why hoarding isn't illegal. However, when hoarding causes a home to be unfit or unsafe, then that's when organizations like code enforcement can step in and require that changes be made to the home. One of those changes can be requiring that they get rid of the things they've been hoarding. Now, some people think that sounds like overreach. Why should law enforcement be allowed to tell you what you can or can't own? But the reason they can do it at that point is because hoarding isn't just a lifestyle choice. It's now affecting health and wellness for you and anyone who lives there, and potentially even for people who live nearby. The basic rule is, do what you want with your junk, but if someone else's safety is threatened, then someone has to step in. That doesn't sound too unreasonable, except that many governments and countries don't hold their own programs accountable for all the junk they produce and leave lying around. Why do they have rules for us that don't apply to them? Here's what I mean. I'm going to describe a real potential situation. This could absolutely happen. There's a certain place where many governments leave their junk just lying around. They don't bother to clean it up. There are no rules that require them to do anything about it. And here's the scarier part, that junk has the potential to kill people. Do you want to know where that junk is? Outer space. That's right. Just about every government who has been to space has caused some kind of space junk to just be floating out there and there above our heads, ready to drop to the earth at any time with no warning. And this isn't a theory, it has already happened. Back in May of 2021, a piece of debris from a Chinese rocket fell back to Earth, crashing into the Indian Ocean. This kind of thing happens more often than you might think. Luckily, there has never been a reported incident of a person being injured or having property damage by falling space junk. Remember, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, about 71% of the Earth's surface is covered in water. That means the odds are much higher that anything falling to Earth is going to land in the water. But what happens if it does impact on land? Well, the United Nations has planned for just that situation with the 1967 Outer Space Treaty. Don't worry, that's not a secret treaty that Earth signed with aliens to keep intergalactical peace. It's actually an agreement made by UN members where they all agreed to certain rules regarding the actions while in space. One of the rules says, states shall be liable for damage caused by their space objects. Perfect. So if a booster rocket crashes through my screen porch and lands in my swimming pool, I can just send a bill to the government that owns the rocket, right? Of course not. If a Russian rocket crashed here, the United States would have to make a claim with Russia and then reimburse you once they got the money. And here's the thing, that might never happen. The Outer Space Treaty has only ever been used once by Canada in 1978, when a broken Soviet satellite spread radioactive debris on Canadian territory. Canada requested $6 million to pay back the cost of the cleanup efforts. In the end, they got about half that from the Soviet Union. In 1979, the U.S. space station Skylab crashed into Western Australia. Australian authorities sent the U.S. a $400 fine for littering. It was mostly a joke, but the U.S. never paid it. Think about that for a minute. In the United States, every single state has some kind of law against littering. But you throw trash on the ground and get caught, you get in trouble. And guess what? Your litter doesn't have the ability to plummet out of the sky at hundreds of miles an hour and kill someone. So there are no rules that require governments and countries to not litter in space. And the laws that would reimburse you for damage may only work some of the time. In other words, beware of falling objects, and you might be on your own. The truth is, the reason there are no laws about cleaning up space junk is because it's expensive and hard to do. If there's one thing we've learned about junk today, it's that it can be very costly. But before I go, there's one last kind of junk I want to tell you about, and this one can be super valuable. I'm talking about maritime laws of salvage and the law of fines. Remember earlier when I mentioned how the ocean covers 71% of the earth? That's a lot of places for boats to go missing, run into trouble, or sink and never be seen again. And here's the interesting thing. Most of the ocean isn't actually owned by any country. That's a lot of potentially valuable ships out there, just waiting to be found. Now, there are some rules, of course. In 1987, the U.S. government passed the Abandoned Shipwreck Act, which gives the government the full title of all shipwrecked ships within the U.S. territorial waters. That's about 3 miles out from the shore. And there's one other law, the Sunken Military Craft Act of 2004, that protects and preserves all military craft within 12 miles of the U.S. coastline. And trust me, you don't want to mess with those rules because you can get some hefty fines for that. But once you're more than 12 miles out, that is international waters, that's where the law of fines gives you the right to find a shipwreck, report it, and make a claim on it. You might be saying, how many shipwrecks could there possibly be in the ocean? The truth is, a lot. According to the Global Foundation for Ocean Exploration, there are an estimated 3 million shipwrecks worldwide. And of all those suspected shipwrecks, less than 1% of them has actually been explored. Think about how many ships full of gold and other valuable metals are out there, just laying on the ocean floor waiting to be found. So what are you waiting for? All you need in order to find those sunken riches is several ships with advanced technical equipment to scan the ocean floor, and submarines that can dive to the ocean floor, and trained divers, and the years and years it would take to map the 3/4 of the ocean floor that still hasn't been mapped. Okay, so finding shipwrecks isn't the easiest thing to do for your average person. But there is a way to make some money off ships that haven't sunk yet. That's where the law of salvage comes in. The law of salvage is a maritime principle that basically says if you risk your own safety to rescue someone's ship or cargo while at sea, then you should be appropriately rewarded. And here's where it gets really interesting. This applies to abandoned or derelict vessels as well. For instance, in the state of Florida, if you find an abandoned boat, you can report it to a law enforcement agency. They will try to find the owner, but if they can't be found or no one claims it, you're within your rights to claim it as your own property. And if someone does claim it, they should pay you the value of the boat in order to get it back. So what have we learned today? It turns out that things we consider junk are both much more expensive and much more valuable than you ever could imagine. There's junk at the bottom of the sea and in outer space. Some people fill their houses with it because they can't help themselves, and the police can even use it to build evidence against criminals. So next time you throw something away, just remember that your junk might have a whole other life that you never even thought about. I'm the Hammer Darryl Isaacs. Thanks for watching Hammer's Law, and be sure to subscribe for more fun and informative legal content.